Ok? Bom dia a todos. Dando
Good
continuidade.
morning, everyone. We are going to continue our activities from World Skills America. Our main mission is to promote professional education, and one of the actions is the sharing of experience. And we're going to initiate our monthly seminar. This is organized by our educational committee, made by Dominican Republic and El Salvador. And I'd like to thank our members of the board and World Skills America, as well as all the technical delegates and the officials that are part of this management. The presentation this month is interpretation button to choose the language. And we are going to invite Professor Alexssandro Reginato to make a presentation. He is the director of the SENAI School Ricardo Lerner in the city of Cotia. So, Mr. Alexssandro Reginato, the floor is yours. And thank you. Thank you, Professor Espada. Begin the presentation. My name is Alex. I am the director of the SENAI Ricardo Lerner School. First of all, I would like to really thank you for being here and for dedicating your time and for having chosen to watch this webinar. We are dealing with important topics today, which is the planning of our presentations and how they should be. So basically, I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do to improve our presentations. To make it easier with regard to the language, you can see that in orange, you can see the Spanish version, and in English, we have the blue letters. So just to make it easier, always look straight to the Spanish or the English as you choose. And if it's Spanish, it will be orange. If it is English, it is blue. Then it's a lot more practical and easier for you to follow the presentation. So in our 1 hour of conversation, the agenda will be the following. First of all, I will set the context. Everything that we see nowadays, especially in the post-pandemic phase. Then I'm going to give you an example of presentations and how we can plan these presentations. It seems to be very simple, but it's not. Some very important rules with regard to online conferences, what we can do, what we should not do. And then we're going to work with our references. In other words, I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation, I put some important references that you can follow. Right, so let us begin. Let us begin the presentation. Over here, I think you all know this basilica. It's the St. Peter's Basilica. And this is a picture that was taken in 2005. And in 2005, if you look at it properly, I'm going to point this for you. You can see one cell phone over here, maybe another one over here, right? So what is the point here? We have several other people watching the announcement of Pope Bento XVI. But then in 2013, with Pope Francisco that was elected, just look at the quantity of technological equipment that we have. So in other words, technology today is in people's hands. In other words, we have technologies that are part of our daily lives, part of our routine, and we're using them in an increasing and more efficient manner. So technology has changed over the years, right? So in other words, it has evolved. Over here, we have a slide that shows a bit of a joke, right? That things have not changed. The way that we have dealt with technology has not changed over the years. So ever since the Stone Age, but what has changed is the tool that we use. So it is a joke about evolution, technological evolution. This is another very important issue that I'm going to show you. This is about technological evolution. If we take into consideration that ever since 1 year before Christ, it took about 1,000 years to get to technological knowledge. And then starting in year 1,500, it took another 250 years for us to really have, or to double our evolution capacity in the technological area. This is becoming faster and faster, and speed goes up all the time. So from the first year BC, it's about 1,500. So 250 years until 750. And then this doubled every 100 years. And after the war, every 25 years. And nowadays, we have this technological knowledge that is doubling. And some studies estimate that it doubles in less than 1 year. So definitely technological evolution is huge. And over here, we see our world. This is the world today, which is volatile. It is uncertain. It is complex, and it is ambiguous. I don't know if everybody has heard of this expression, a VUCA year, VUCA world. This expression comes from the military. So the VUCA world, the military, American militaries, they use this term to be able to say, look, during the war, things change quickly, things are uncertain, things are complex, and what really seems to be is not anymore. So we have this acronym VUCA. And that's exactly the concept of volatility. It's the concept that has to do with the speed with which things change, a lot of change, our uncertainties. The U for the stands for uncertainty in the VUCA world, complexity. So as soon as everything is very volatile and changes very quickly, this has caused great complexity. And this has made the world more ambiguous. So in other words, it's a world where many things that seem to be right and correct, they are not correct anymore nowadays, or right. And what happened? The pandemic brought us a different kind of world. Nowadays, we have studies about a world that was supposed to happen in a few years. And then because of the pandemic, things were accelerated, things became much faster. So over here, we have what we call Banny worlds, which is fragile, which is anxious, and a world that is not linear and also we're not able to understand it. So the concept of the Bani world, it brings us the speed of change that we have been through. So in the VUCA world, if volatility was something constant, in the Bani world, it basically reached its peak, becoming a world that is extremely fragile, let's say. So I'm going to ask you to excuse me. I'm just going to make a change in the screen, my computer over here. Maybe the presentation is going to be interrupted for a few minutes, just to make it easier, because I'm working with two monitors. And the ease that we have to work with technology is definitely going to make it easier for us. So just excuse me for a minute. I am just going to interrupt the screen sharing. And I'm going to invert the monitors, okay? So just a few seconds, please.
Pronto. Todos conseguem ver agora? Paul?
Can you see the screen? Paul, can you tell me if it's all right? Yes, Professor. Thank you. Thank you for the attention, your attention. Because I basically switched screens here. So anyway, I was talking about the Bani world. It is a world, a VUCA world. So this became so complex and so extreme that everything was very brittle or fragile, and something that is changing. Everything is changing, and this was happening at a very high speed. And people are afraid of losing their jobs, and companies work with more robust planning and longer planning. And most people seem to understand that everything can collapse at any moment. Now, it's an anxious world, definitely. Anxiety, and at least in Brazil, since March of last year, this became an uncertainty for many people. So there was fear and impotence, and people didn't feel safe. And this anxiety became latent and predominant for most of the professionals. So many professionals had to reinvent themselves, many jobs were lost, many companies really had to change their way of negotiating and their way of working. And it's a non-linear world. So in other words, all these things that were more linear for us before, they were easier. Nowadays, it's not the case. So they are not constant, and everything can change in a very quick manner, and also in a way that is going to make us rethink and reinvent ourselves drastically every day. And finally, the part of being incomprehensible the ambiguity because of the excess information that we receive on a daily basis. So excessive information, and definitely we all notice this, we're all connected, increasingly connected. We have WhatsApp, we have emails, we have phones, our cell phones, we have video conferences. So we're constantly connected and constantly plugged in 24 hours a day and absorbing so much information. So to begin with, how are we going to plan our presentations? This connected world and this presentation in the past, probably it would be an in-person meeting. And because of this anticipation in terms of technology, this is happening much faster, very, very fast. So we have to look for some alternatives for this presentation. And we have to do something that will hold people's attention, because that's not easy, especially when we're talking about the virtual world, right? When we were making our presentations in person, it's different. Over here, I can't see anyone. Everybody can see me. Everybody can see my presentation, right? But we have to, I'm going to give you these tips because this presentation could be the class that you're giving or a lecture that you're giving at a congress, at a conference. So we're going to have to take care of a few things, be careful with a few things during the planning. So preparing the environment and planning how this presentation is going to be done, what media you're going to use, you know, things that we have to be careful about, and in our assessment of the presentation. So in my presentation, I tried to show you several things, and in a different manner. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on, and you'll be able to understand many things about the presentation from the slides that I'm showing you. So let's keep going. So how am I able to make a presentation that can inspire people who are listening to it? For us to be able to inform people and for us to be able to motivate these people. So basically, for our presentations, as I said, it is very important for us to inspire, inform, and motivate people. And this is something that we do every day with our students. I believe that many of you are professors or teachers in the educational area, and these presentations, they basically have this objective, these three great objectives: to inspire, to inform, and to motivate people. So this is something that we really need to worry about, and we need to find the best way of doing it to be able to do this. So the success of our presentation, these are minions, and it depends on what? It depends on very careful planning. So minions have now ended their noise, and we're going to need careful planning. And you're going to have to dedicate yourself to how you're going to make up the content. So there are some main points that I'm going to give you. And that's how your presentation should be. So the first main point is to do what? We have to put our audience in first place. So in this presentation, I made this presentation. I knew my audience. I know who you are. I asked about it beforehand. I asked the team from Professor Espada about the audience and composition, the countries involved. And I tried to understand which professionals, what kind of professionals you were, and I needed to make a presentation to be able to inspire you and inform you and motivate. And we have some tips. So respect the audience in our environment. That's very important. So if we were in an in-person presentation, face-to-face, there are some basic rules, and I think it's going to happen soon. Next year, I think it's going to be possible in our world. So, basic rules: don't have your back to the audience, don't put your hands in your pockets, don't gesticulate too much. I have a problem with that because I am from an Italian family, and you know that Italians speak with their hands, right? And, just yawning, looking at your watch, and, we have to make it alive. So imagine, and you've probably seen some lectures, right? And the person has the same tone of voice, and that becomes very, very boring. And you end up, becoming uninterested. You lose your interest, right? Because it's so boring. So we need to have something that is alive. It's a presentation that is interesting. So, as I told you, get to know your audience. Get to know your audience before you plan your presentation. That is extremely important to know. It's important for you to know who you're going to be talking to. Even during the pandemic, of course, it's not that simple, but for you to know what kind of public you're going to speak to, if they are students, if they are professors, if they are professionals in your area, if they are not professionals from your area, this really makes a difference. And it's the main point for you to start the planning of your presentation. Right. So it's not easy to plan a presentation. So you need time. You have a series of ideas that you have to organize in this big list of things that you want to put in your presentation, if you're talking about virtual presentations or in-person presentations. This really makes a difference. So you have to select a video, the content, the best image to explain something. So in other words, you have to organize all the ideas in the most effective way possible and quick as well. All presentations, they must have, first of all, content, an introduction, sorry, then content, right? And a conclusion. That's what they should all have. Usually we spend maybe 10% of our presentations, 10 to 15% of our presentations in the introduction, 75% with the content, and in the conclusion, we spend about 15%. That's very important. Something that we should avoid using is, cliches and happy jokes, but the storytelling is allowed. And many times when you're able to tell a story inside your presentation, to be able to link the subjects that you are talking about, it's really very good. People like to hear that. People like to hear stories about how things are done and how you can illustrate this. And the stories can be true, or the stories can be something that you invent just to put inside the context of your presentation. All right. But there are some things we have to be careful with, with ourselves too. So fear of exposing yourself. Many times people are afraid of exposing themselves in front of their colleagues. That's something natural, but we have to overcome this. Over here, I'm probably talking to an audience. Well, last time I checked, it was more than 100 people watching. And imagine if I just, my mind went blank and I didn't do anything and there's more than 100 people watching me. No, you don't have to be this shy. Oh, but I can't do it, Alex. I can't overcome my shyness. And you have to try and find out why you feel so shy. So how can I overcome this fear of exposing myself? So practice your presentation with family members, with friends. This is extremely important. And as soon as you gain confidence, because I believe that many times the fear is because you don't know how to use the technological resources, or you're not very confident in what you're saying, but you end up losing this because you develop and get better over time. As I said, you have to practice your presentation and speak to your audience, right? Look and speak to your audience. I'm talking to you, right? I'm trying to look at the camera so that I can actually, it's like I'm looking at each one of you, and that's also valid in a presentation. And you're going to be doing that in person, right? And this is something that is very important now. Pay attention to the language of your audience and with regard to your mother tongue, right? When you are in a conference or you're making a presentation where you use interpretation, my recommendation is the following. Speak with pauses, right? Not that slowly, but not very quickly, because simultaneous translation is very complex. It's very difficult to do simultaneous translation. I don't know if you've already tried to translate simultaneously, but it is a very difficult exercise. So imagine our translators here, Shirley and Henrique. They are listening to me and they are speaking in another language. They are listening to me in Portuguese and they're doing the translation into English and Spanish. So try to do that and look at how difficult it is and how complex it is. So for us we have to maintain a certain rhythm. That's very important for them. Not only for them to be able to do a good translation, but it's also good for you because it means that your message, what you're trying to pass on to your audience, is being done in the best way possible. We're not missing anything. You're not losing the context of things. So pay attention to that. And these rules that I'm talking about, they are valid for online presentations as well as for in-person ones, right? Keep your tone of voice. So it's not, the tone of voice, constant tone of voice. You have to, sort of put life into it, right? So of course, don't shout or scream or don't speak in a very low tone. You have to maintain a certain tone that is pleasant, not that fast, and where people can listen and understand. Many times we can make a break and, just pause a little bit so we don't speak that fast. And when you take breaks, for example, it could be the moment, that's something that we can do in a presentation. It's to take a break to drink some water, for example, while I'm here talking to you. Don't speak too fast. As I've already said, it becomes very difficult. And avoid slang and language vices and, difficult words, because many people may not know how to interpret what you're saying properly, especially in a presentation like this one, where you have simultaneous translation. If you use slang or if you use a language vice, maybe it's not going to be understood either into Spanish or into English. And it's not very nice to have, an in-person presentation. It doesn't fit if people speak another language. So the secret of all this, to be careful, is to have a balance. So balance is the secret for us to be able to develop our presentation in a very easygoing and natural manner. Right, so let's talk about how to prepare our slides. So slides actually illustrate our presentation. It is very important for slides to have movement. And you can see that I've placed some animated GIFs and I created some movement. So it's not boring, right? And another important tip is to not read your slides. So imagine if I were here reading my slides. So the slides are used to illustrate the presentation, help you to understand and assimilate the presentation. It would be very boring because you already do that yourself naturally, right? You're watching and you're already reading the slides naturally. So it's no use just repeating something that you're already reading. That is something that I tell many teachers here. So I said, don't read your slides. The slides are basically to help you to talk about a certain subject and illustrate what you're talking about, to keep your rhythm, to remind you. Otherwise, the student is just going to tell you, so professor, reading slides, if you're going to do that, just give me the presentation and I can read it at home. That makes sense, right, to have a presentation. So the slide is to help you to understand and assimilate the presentation. It is an aid, it's a visual aid to help you, support you, okay? And how can you prepare the slides for my presentation? The first thing to do when I start preparing my slides is to make drafts. So make drafts. Start preparing. There are some people who like to write on a notebook or just put a list of topics, or they like to start making the drafts on PowerPoint, which is one of the tools used to make presentations. You will all know about it. There are several others in the market. Another point is to highlight the key issues. The key issues are the ones that are in my agenda. And then over time, we create a few sub-items that we can include in the presentation. And something else that we can do is include images, examples. That's all very important and it really helps us a lot when we are explaining something and putting our ideas in there. So as you can see over here, lorem ipsum, it's a very known text in the editors, for editors. So it is in Latin and it was written by Cicero, 45 before Christ. And they took this poem from the graphics area and, to fill in the blanks and the way it's going to be done, the way it's going to be placed inside a presentation, as a flyer, for example. Instead of putting words, they just use that. Most of you probably already know this poem, right? This lorem ipsum that is used for the graphics area, the world skills in the graphic area, you probably know this. So every presentation needs to have what? A title. Usually we don't necessarily have to put a title over here. We can put the title on the side, right? So if you're watching, you know what it refers to. And it also helps you to be able to work and understand what part of this you are discussing, part of your agenda you're discussing. So it's the right topics and titles. And then every presentation must have a title, and you have to avoid placing too much information on a single slide. And you're going to present only one idea per slide. And if you put more than 3 different topics on one slide, it's difficult, and people need time to look at it and to understand and avoid abbreviations. So I put the slide on purpose. There are many things that are done on purpose. It's for you to see that it doesn't work, right? Look at the quantity of information that I have on my slides. And you probably understand, right? It's, it's polluted, it's too busy. And, it's confusing. So don't do this. Don't put a lot of information on a slide. Try to use simple slides as you saw in the previous slides. We have the main topic and we narrate and describe this main topic of the slide. Another common thing, and I also did it in my next slide, also on purpose, be careful with the size of the letters, the fonts that you use. Do not use very strong colors or very light colors in your presentation because it's just going to be a mess. So choose a font that you believe to be adequate. I do not recommend those fonts, as you can see in the previous slide, cursive. Try to use Yal, Montserrat, Segoy. But there are different types of fonts that can be used that are clear and they are easy to be used and for a good presentation and for everything to be seen very well. So avoid this sort of thing. So definitely you should not put this into your presentation. During the planning of your presentation, these are the main points that you really have to pay attention to. Now, going into the next topic, which is online conferences. I have some recommendations for you here for these online conferences, things that we should do, things we should not do, what we should avoid, and mainly what must be done. So I have to, well, this was something that was supposed to increase your efficiency and success in a presentation, in a virtual presentation. So at the same time, you have to minimize your personal exposure because nowadays everything is virtual and you should follow this on the internet. People who are in embarrassing situations and video conferences, and we should avoid this sort of thing. Not only the embarrassment and the personal exposure, but we also have to be careful about safety of the information. So security risk, sometimes you can leak some personal data because of something that is in your background or something that exposes you, and this is really not convenient. So in this topic, we have to be careful with this subject, what kind of care we have to take, what we should be careful with. So before any online presentation, it's very important for us to know about the peripheral equipment, the camera, the microphone, the computer. Preparing an online presentation is the same as preparing for an in-person meeting. Nothing changes, right? So, of course, we are not close to each other physically, but the way that we communicate is the same. So you can see me, of course, I can open up a screen and see all of you, those who have an open camera, but the way that we prepare does not change. And we need to be familiar with this sort of thing. We have to know how to work with the tools, the video conference tools. We have Teams, we have Zoom, we have Google Meet. We have to check beforehand what the computer is like, if everything is well installed, if everything is ready and working. I need to close the other programs. I cannot have open programs that are going to sound alarms or notifications. Why? Because I need to concentrate and all the resources of my computer have to be available so that we can work in this way. So this is what I usually say. Avoid technical problems. Be prepared. Don't check your internet connection, in the last minutes. And one of my greatest concerns is exactly that. So imagine, in the middle of the presentation, I have a connection problem with the internet at the school. And, I have a plan B. If this really happens, I already had a plan B so that I would be able to connect and talk to you. So this is very important. Preparing is as important as giving the presentation. Now, many times, just to make it easier, we go into a meeting using our cell phones. So put it on plane mode, because the calls that come in are not going to interrupt your connection. And if you're inside your company, try to find a place where when you're using Wi-Fi, don't use 3G or 4G or 5G, because 5G is not here yet, but it is in a few places around the world. So it's a different internet possibility. So we can use this because of the reliability of this new 5G network, what's going to happen. But be careful with that. Pay attention to the camera, the microphone, everything that involves your presentation. Be careful with that. Pay attention to that. So today, I checked everything yesterday. I'm here at the school today at SENAI, and I checked everything yesterday, and I arrived here and arrived at 8 in the morning early. I was already checking everything, checking if it was okay, if it was all right. I made a few tests with a few people here from my unit. And let's check how it's going to work. So you have to be prepared. You have to control anything that can happen, any issue you may have. And it can happen, right? So it is ideal for you to try and have your meeting, your online meeting, in your workspace. Why? Because the possibility of internet instability at the school is much smaller compared to my house. So I always try to do this in your working environment. If you are sharing your working environment with somebody else, many times, there are several people working together, they are close to you, and you should tell these people that you're going to participate in a meeting and ask them to speak in a lower tone or avoid using telephones or going into the cameras. So you won't have any sound pollution in your webinar. If you're going to do it from home, you have to choose a good environment, and it's very important. You have to organize your space. You put the computer with a good environment. You eliminate the distractions. So if there's something inadequate on your background, so maybe a family picture with everybody on the beach or parties, sports events, be alone in this environment. Talk to your family and everyone who's at home, and tell them that they should not interrupt you during the presentation. Or if you're watching a video conference or something, you explain that you cannot be interrupted. Be sure to work out the sound in the environment and check your connections, your stable connections. Try to use fixed internet connection that's very adequate, and whatever environment you're in, use the official background, just like I'm doing here. This is from World Skills Americas. If you want to have the effects that appear many times, they appear around us, you should use a screen that you can type into Google and Chroma key, and you're going to see that it's very easy to use. The cost is very low. So remember, it's your image, right? You're going to be the center of attention. So you have to be careful, right? So how do I look? My clothes, and this is also something that we're going to see in a minute. We have the issue of being organized, and as I've already said, things that you should avoid. Another very important thing, being punctual. So online meetings are organized in advance. So you already received the message, you received the invitation beforehand. So if you are the speaker or the host, you know, maybe 30 or 40 minutes before, you're going to connect and you're going to check if the sound is okay, if you look okay, and you're going to do this with the host. And we did this today, 10:20 in the morning. I already had Paul, I already had the interpreters, talking to them and adjusting and aligning all of the details. So that's really very important. Sharing information. If you have something to send to the people who are watching, something they need to read, share this before. So send it to them beforehand. And as well as sharing information, use the camera correctly. So check, if you're exactly in the right square, the camera cannot, focus from the top down or from the bottom up, because maybe that's not a good angle for you. So people can see your forehead a little more, or your chin, or just looking to your side. So usually 60 to 70 centimeters distance, right? Depending on your height is good. And it has to be at the height of your eyes. Always pay attention to the microphone. That's another very important point. So this is extremely important equipment. So of course, all the presentations, when you enter, your microphone should be muted, and you're only going to use it when you're going to speak. Now, try to use microphones like a headset, and avoid large microphones that go around your head. Those, we call them it's like shells. That's what we say in Brazil. So avoid those, because many times if you are a speaker, the type of microphone can call more attention to you compared to yourself. And if the camera has a resource, the Zoom resource, you can also use it. All right. Okay. So I had something in my presentation. So this cannot happen. All right. Okay, this is a video conference. It's a work meeting, and you have to keep a good posture to provide credibility. So being careful about your appearance is important. The clothes you wear, you have to dress properly. It's the same as if you were going to work. So you should avoid clothes that have stripes, because this creates an effect. It distorts the image, and sometimes it doesn't look good because of the equipment and the videos, the cameras that pick up your images. So avoid stripes. You should use pastel tones, and this is going to help you to have a better image. And what I usually say, so you're far from the company or from the university, and you're at home, you're not going to appear in a video conference or in a meeting with your pajamas on, right? Or with, casual clothes. Another recommendation, which is unnecessary, I think, but I always say it. So don't watch while you're sitting on the couch, so you don't have distractions from your TV. Don't watch it when you're, lying in bed, because you are working, right? So you really need to behave and to dress properly so that you can provide credibility. We have the issue of posture. That's also according to the purpose of the meeting. So keep this posture, pay attention to the people. You're looking at them, right? So pay attention to what the other participants are saying, and show interest in the subjects that are being discussed. In a simple meeting, for example, people sometimes interact, sometimes in webinars, the questions are at the end. Don't lose focus, don't get distracted. And something else I usually say is that I participated in several meetings and people are eating chocolate, eating ice cream. You should not take food to in-person meetings. In online meetings, it's the same thing. You should not be eating. What you can do is, like, if you're the speaker, you can drink some water, right? Because of the explanation, right? Because you're talking a lot. So it's not pleasant for people to hear you chewing or speaking with your mouth full. Right. So while you're watching, once again, check and well, minimize your distractions, basically. So imagine if I'm talking to you and I'm looking at my cell phone, I'm looking at my emails, and I'm deviating my attention from the camera. Many times in online meetings, people have their cameras open, and this is something that I also recommend. If it is an online meeting, open your camera. It's elegant, unless they ask you to not do it, right? So to start the meeting, you mute your microphone and open your videos. But if they ask you to close your cameras, then we close it. We only open them when we're going to talk, for example. Now, something else that is important is to be tolerant of technological failures. So many people have difficulties, working in the virtual world. So be calm, offer to help, and respect the personal limitations that people have. Things are changing very quickly. That's something we see often, and it's very important to respect and to have tolerance for this sort of thing. Technological issues, yes, they are going to happen. So, minimize distractions and be tolerant of the technological failures and also of people's personal limitations. And if you have to leave, send a message through the chat, stop the host maybe saying, okay, I need to leave, do it in private or write it in the chat for everyone. That is polite. And in person, you don't simply stand up and leave without saying anything to anyone or warning your boss that you need to leave. It's also valid for virtual meetings, as I told you. These are very important points. I'm now going to show you a video. And this video shows a little bit of what technological change is going to be, how it's happening. This video is from a conference in Las Vegas by Microsoft. Many people have already seen this video, but it's a way of showing you that the language barriers are going to be overcome very soon. And the meetings that are virtual nowadays, where we're working and looking at a camera like this, maybe they're going to be done in a different holographic manner. So I'm going to show you, it's a short 3-minute film. Let me do this here so you can see.
Pleasure to be here in Las Vegas. Now, it's a pleasure to be here in Las Vegas to present to you. Now, I get invited to do keynote.
Pergunta, vocês estão ouvindo o som?
Do you hear the sound? Just a question. Paul, can you tell me? Yes, we can hear. Of the video, right? Yes. Okay. All right. Let's keep going.
It's a pleasure to be here in Las Vegas to present to you. Now, I get invited to do keynotes across the globe. And while it's easy for me to be here in Las Vegas, it isn't always easy for me to travel across the world. And even when I do, I can't always speak the local language. Well, what if neither language nor distance mattered for me to deliver a fantastic keynote? What if technology could help me be anywhere I needed to be and speak any language I wanted? Well, it can. We are bringing together the power of mixed reality and Azure AI services to create a truly game-changing experience. What you're about to see is an exact hologram of me wearing the same outfit that we recently captured at a mixed reality studio. And I don't speak Japanese, but what if I wanted to deliver my keynote in Japanese? Using Azure AI technology, I can translate my English into Japanese and train it to sound exactly like me, the same voice tones, those same inflections. Now, we brought this together, my hologram and Azure AI, to show you what's possible. So first, I'm going to put on my HoloLens 2 here, and then we'll flip in the room to the special camera so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. Let's get started. First, let me introduce you to Mini-Me. There she is, my perfect holograph. And thanks to the power of HoloLens 2, she just floats right with me. I'm literally holding my hologram, so natural. Now she's a little small to do a keynote. So let's get her up so she can do full-size Japanese keynote. Render keynote.
ホログラムになることには本当に驚くべきことがあります。私たちは最新の複合現実キャプチャ技術を使用し、私のホログラムを作成しています。実在の人物をホログラムとして見たことがあるかもしれませんが、私が実際に日本語を話しているのが新しいのです。私は日本語を話しませんが、私の声とホログラムは完璧な日本語で話しています。これはニューラルテキスト読み上げと呼ばれる最新の人工知能技術、いわゆるニューラル TTS を使用しています。私たちは自分の声の録音を使用し、私のように聞こえる私自身の個人的な音声署名を作成します。日本語からフランス語、ポルトガル語まで話せます。今、この技術は私たちが働き、遊び、生活する方法に関して、世界中の国境や障壁を取り除くことができると想像してみてください。まさに SF が現実になるところです。
This is mind-blowing technology. And what you just saw was my life-size hologram, my exact replica, rendered here in real time, speaking Japanese with my unique voice signature. To do this, we use mixed reality technology to create my hologram and render it here live. Then we use Azure's speech-to-text capability and English transcription to get my speech. Then use Azure Translate to get the speech into Japanese, and finally applied neural text-to-speech technology so it sounded exactly like me, just speaking Japanese. And the most amazing part? All of these technologies exist today. The future is here.
Muito bem.
Great. So that's what I wanted to present to you. I wanted to show you this. I have a few things and I left this on purpose, the conclusions. During the presentation, there were a few things happening. I don't know if you were paying attention. So we had some failures and you could think, oh, so, Alexa's talking about presentations and there were some mistakes there. Well, it's a way of knowing if you were really paying attention, if you were really there watching. That little, joke that people say, oh, let me check. I did it on purpose, just to check if you were paying attention. But I really tried to do this so that, unforeseen events can always happen. And right at the beginning, and I asked you for a moment because I need to change my slides. In fact, there was a change. My slides were inverted, and you have to be very calm about it. So, okay, let me just switch this because it's something that happens, even if you planned everything, in spite of all the planning you did. And there are some other things, to avoid doing this in your presentations. I hope that you enjoyed it, but in summary, the objective of a good presentation is to inspire people, inform them, and motivate people. And for us to be able to have all of this, we really need to plan. This demands time, and we have to have technological resources. We also have the need of other people to make all of this happen adequately and correctly. So in other words, it is a set of factors that are going to lead towards you having your presentation, providing your message that will inspire and motivate people. It is a presentation that was very successful. So we have several factors involved. But in general, these are the topics and the rules that I also presented in online presentations. So we have seen a lot of things that are really not adequate. So we always have to remember that we are educators and we are the example. So we really have to keep this posture. Okay. So I am now leaving you in the slides at the end of my presentation. They're going to be shared with all of you participants. Some references where you can actually go in and get inspiration and some resources to actually make your presentations more interesting. Always remember that not everything that you download on the internet is for free. So you have to check if you don't have, any rights, any copyright. So all of this is free. They are free gifts, no problem. And you have sites with premium models from Microsoft. And if you don't have a contract with Microsoft in your school or with some other company that produces software for presentations, I think it's important to have this. I think it's important because in the educational area, we have lots of resources available. Many of them are for free or they're extremely low cost. So it is important for you to look this up and for you to encourage your professors and people to, come out of those common presentations. So I'm not going to read all of them. You have the references. And over here, we have 2 slides with the list. And that's basically what I had to say within the time that I had. So according to my watch, I said 50 minutes. And now I'm going to open up for questions. Any questions you may have, and please feel free to do so. Thank you, Professor Alexssandro Reginato. We have 2 questions, but Merino is actually going through the questions, and he is going to read them out to you, and then we will send the answers by email to the participants. So we would like to thank you all for your participation. We would like to thank the interpreters, Shirley and Henrique, and to all those who helped in the organization, IOC, El Salvador, and everyone. Thank you, all of you, all the delegates who participated, the technicians and the officials, our ambassadors with the connections and all the indicators in your different countries. Thank you very much. And once again, Alex, for us, Alexssandro Reginato, thank you very much. And we will meet next month in the next webinar. And we will have another opportunity to share experience and improve our educational process professionally with all the 27 countries that are members. So take care.